amazing. They're like going, oh, I say to my mum, well, you know, it's WF. She's on page now. She knows,
okay.
she, like,
Wow,
she knows,
that's amazing. Yeah.
Which has just been like mumbo jumbo, like about a year ago. Yeah. But I've been feeding these little truth bombs, you know.
That's a good approach, isn't it? Because nobody's going to sit down for a
Are we on live now? I just wanted to say.
Are we?
Just
we
in
are.
case you're trying to keep.
I don't mind.
Right, okay. So how long did it take to wake your mother up then?
Well, 2.5 years. Yeah. Because they were well embedded in the narrative to begin with, and it took quite a long time to gradually, gently kind of tease them out, you know. And but it's a happy thing, you know, because we had all these arguments. I mean, we were completely saw eye to eye on politics, but they really got led astray by this Corona crap, and they were deeply under the influence of propaganda.
Was it the television?
It was the television. It was absolutely the television. And I used to occasionally visit them, you know, when we were released temporarily, you know, from our prisons, and I used to like visit them. But I'd come in a hurry because it was, you know, so many Corona. That's a wonderful.
Not Jeff.
No, not Jeff. Absolutely not Jeff. So there you go.
Yeah. And do you want to just stand here?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to say just a little bit about Jeff?
Jeff, my God, where can I begin? I mean, he's hardcore. He was an ultra, basically. I just think he was so inspirational in his really uncompromising attitude to all things to do with our liberties and our democracy and our free speech, and the terrible things that were being done to us. And I think he was extraordinarily impressive. He was very eloquent. I remember he came up to Nottingham. I sort of like hosted him when he came up to Nottingham. He was like supporting Amy Dallamura in her bid against it was Anna Soubry's old constituency, Broxtowe. And of course Anna Soubry wasn't standing, but because she'd sort of given up, you know. But Jeff was there to help her campaign, and he was dressed in his Richard the Lionheart medieval warrior's uniform, you know, and he was standing there in Market Square. And he was like, this is in Beeston, the local Market Square in Beeston, which is on the outskirts of Nottingham, and that's Anna Soubry's constituency, her old constituency. And he was like just debating with all comers. They were like, you know, they were arguing with him, and he was so eloquent in just, you know, putting across his point of view for free speech, liberty, and that was where he was coming from. I was very moving at his service, which it's a shame you didn't come, but you weren't able to come. But I think the whole service was just so beautifully done, and it really kind of encapsulated where he was coming from in terms of, you know, building a new Jerusalem. You know. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. You made it.
Hello. The last standing Brexit councillor. That's the only then last standing Enfield.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to remind you.
Oh no, it's all right. It's just.
You know.
It was 5 years, wasn't it?
Well, 2016, I guess. 6 years, really.
Yeah.
But
a long time ago.
Yeah.
I will. I'm just like Martha. She's an amazing lady. Martha. She goes to all the marches. I think she's about 82, 83. She comes from St Albans. She goes to all the marches.
It was good. You noticed I left my rucksack there. I left it in the cloakroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'll go back afterwards.
Good to see you, young man.
Good to see you.
Long time no see.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been, what has it been, like 5 years now?
It feels like it, doesn't it?
Are you the GB News man?
Resistance GB.
He's the one that the police love to beat up.
I was going to ask whether you wanted to say a few words about Jeff.
What a fighter that man was, what a wonderful man. And it's the least I can do is come to show a bit of respect for such a beautiful man for the cause. He was first-class gentleman. I knew him quite well. He was a first-class gentleman, and I'm very saddened by his passing.
And can I ask, do you have a favourite memory of him?
Outside Downing Street with these tyranny posters, and he's disappeared and left me with all the coppers going round it. But yeah, outside Downing Street with get rid of the tyranny, and it's more up to date than ever, isn't it? As you know yourself.
It just gets worse.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Good to see you.
Hopefully we can make something nice out of this, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll use the footage that we got.
I didn't think there was loudspeakers in it.
To be honest, I kind of like the new High Priest better than the old High Priest. He's gone a bit more punk.
Oh, you know him as well. Of course you up him regular, yeah. He is different. Somebody did go up to him and give him a quiet word. I thought, I know what you're telling him, that this is a memorial. And it was all understanding, but he's here for the day.
No, he's here to support Jeff. He's just doing
Is he
it.
really? I didn't know that.
Oh no, he's been against the lockdowns and everything.
I know he joined in, but I just thought he just tagged on.
I'm not sure how much of a
He
contribution.
wheels that around, doesn't he, when he's going? Yeah.
Did you want to say a few words about Jeff at all?
Yeah, great bloke. And he said, "Hi, who are you?" I said, "Alan." And he said, "I'm Jeff." And of course he was one of the speakers, along with quite a few, I won't mention them all. And I thought, this guy is good. And then since then, like, it's on the circuit of freedom of speech, anti-lockdown. I've done 70 demos. He must have done near that amount. But they're all for the same thing. But yeah, what a great guy. And he's always carrying that placard. And I've held it for him because you see he gets tired. So he said, "Hold this for you." And then he has a little break, maybe a cup of tea or coffee, whatever he drinks, or somebody else can do it for him, you know. And I thought, yeah, nice bloke. So he had a chalk striped suit on that day. He looked very smart. I can't remember his speech because too long ago for me, getting my age. So most memorable thing, dressed like a Knights Templar up at Parliament Square. That was interesting. And sticking to it, getting arrested. Now I've been to many demos, but at my age I don't want to get arrested. Although I know he's not doing anything wrong, or he hasn't done anything wrong. He's freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and he was the epitome of that. He stood up for it, and he had the guts to get arrested. I've seen him get arrested here in one other place, and yeah, great guy. And that's all I've got to say today. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Cheers then.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, no, there's usually three of those guys.
Hello. How's it going? How are you doing? Good. How's yourself? It's a little sad to be here today, I think. But, I mean, can you imagine not many people get this much of a turnout?
This is exactly it, isn't it? It's exactly it. He deserves that respect, that's the thing. He clearly inspired people, which is why people are here today, you know what I mean? He certainly inspired me getting off my sofa on a Saturday morning, so, you know.
He inspires you?
Well, it normally takes, on a Saturday morning, it normally takes my kids or my missus to get me off the sofa, you know. But he's clearly done enough and inspired enough and fought enough to deserve that kind of respect, you know what I mean, and to make the effort to come here. It's taken me, what, a couple of hours to get here, but that's testament to what a guy he must have been, you know. And the amazing thing is, I've never ever spoken to Jeff in my life, you know.
You've never spoken to Jeff?
Never spoken to him, yet I'm standing here because of him, you know, after he's passed away, sadly. So he continues to inspire, you know what I mean? Which means he lives on, essentially, so You know, he's a warrior, he's a legend, so why wouldn't I be here? And at no point, I mean, like I said, I procrastinate a lot, you know, especially at the weekends. But at no point have I thought today or yesterday or whatever that, I don't think I'll bother going. You know what I mean? I don't think I'll bother. You know, the entire time I felt the need to be here, which in itself is testament to him and you know what he achieved, basically. Because, like I say, I've never spoken to him, but I'm clearly inspired by him, as are all of these people who are here today, and yourself included.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you've been inspired by him, never have met him, but then.
Well, I mean, I'd seen him about, obviously, at protests, especially throughout 2021. I'd heard his speeches, I'd watched it, you know, the clips of him. So that in itself obviously inspires, you know, that he made a difference, he changed things. People may think that that's not a huge thing, you know, that he didn't achieve a huge great deal other than turn up a protest, but that's because they don't understand how life works and how one person inspires another, you know, and it all comes...
Inspires another.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we all interact with each other, so we all affect each other. So everything he did in his life affected everything everybody did in their life, you know. Even those queuing up at back centres, you know, that have never met him, never heard of him, they're still inspired by him because his actions and interactions led to other actions in each other and just created ripple effects. And everybody does. So he's clearly created tsunamis for this amount of people to come here on a Saturday to honour him, you know. So he deserves it. He deserves it, in my opinion, and he certainly gets my support. You know, I hope he rests in peace. He's a legend. Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
No worries, mate.
Did you see the thing about all the crabs?
Hello there. Hello.
I just know you're famous, and you was knocked down by the police, weren't you?
A few times.
Assaulted by the police.
Yes.
How are you getting on with the case for prosecuting the police for unlawful arrest, like the coaches?
Well, I'm locked. Basically, I've been locked up because what they're doing is they're going after me. It was meant to be done this year, right, which was literally a year after they attacked me. But then they've kicked it into next year. I think they've kicked it into, what was it, March or something next year? It's ridiculous. So you don't get justice.
Well, we know there's no justice. We know that.
So they're stringing it out, but
you presented them with a case, have you?
But we need to wait till this case gets done first, unfortunately, because they say...
You mean your case?
Yes, with the case, the fake case that they're bringing against me.
What spurious charge are they levying against you?
Oh, they're saying that when 30 of them assaulted me and punched the crap out of me on the ground in front of 50 witnesses and cameras, and with about 4,000 people watching live, that apparently I attacked them.
It's so evil.
Well, you've got the footage to show them.
It's just a lie. You just tell them you are lying.
Yes, they have no evidence, but you know the courts all waste my time.
They don't need evidence. They're liars, aren't they?
It's just a whole load of time and hassle and stress, which
is what they do. That's how they operate.
All it is it's sort of persecution by process.
Persecution by process.
But we'll just have to see what the jury says. But they're trying to put me in prison, clearly. But I'm just not having it.
Human rights triumph. Well, they should. But human rights have been trampled on, haven't they?
But anyway, is it okay if I ask you about this sign?
Yes, of course.
So let's talk a little bit about this sign then.
I think this is one of Jeff's best because we do have a fascist police force, and they're brutal and sadistic and they're unlawful, and we need to tackle it. We need to tackle them and tackle them head on. Yeah.
And is there anything you'd like to say about Jeff? Do you have any favourite memories of him?
He was a lovely man. He's a great loss to us, a terrific loss. I can't believe he's gone. We're personal, well, sort of personal friends, and he belonged to our email group. He was one of our email group. So in constant contact with him, and it was a terrific shock. And it's a huge loss to us.
Do you have a favourite memory? I know it's difficult.
I think when he started, you know, at Hyde's Park, and there were so few, about 6, I think, with Pierce, and he was handcuffed and he was shouting at them, you know, that was the beginning. And he went on from there. He was a tireless warrior. He was tireless. He was everywhere. He was just amazing. He really was.
Well, thank you very much.
Jeff's original finally learnt from his family, so nice.
They need to go in a museum, I think.
I think so. There's some great ones. I love this one. Yeah. Tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. Yeah, definitely. Great.
Hello. Good to see you guys. Good to see you. Hello. I can't avoid you, can I?
Not yet. That's why I'm corner.
I
can't avoid meta science at the moment. That's one thing.
Well, it's meta, it can't be avoided.
Seemingly.
It's the meta science verse.
Yeah. He once asked me to do a drum solo, and I said, I don't do drum solos. Then he introduced me as, instead of Bongo Nick, he introduced me as Lee Earl. And I just said to him earlier that I'm early. I didn't mean I'm Earl Lee. I mean, I'm early as opposed to late. It's crazy. Yeah.
Right, that's it, before you drive away.
My grandma thinks she's done So you have a young boy,
Is the back? Yeah, on the front. Yeah. Do you remember? You
crazy,
Yeah.
Outside Parliament.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Thank you.
Don't worry, that wasn't the Met Police for once. Give us a second, guys. It's very durable. 1 second. Sorry, guys. I need to just take. There we go. That should be fairly secure.
Oh, we've got one of them.
Are you talking talking about living in a van now?
What?
Are you talking about living in a van?
Hashtag van life, baby. Yeah, I've been going around. I think the best summer of my life, honestly. I wish I'd done this years ago. So, but yeah, I just left the flat. I just thought I'm not paying council tax anymore. I'm not paying rent, water, gas, electricity, landline. It's amazing. Yeah, just the fuel. But you really don't realise how much you're saving.
Oh,
just
yeah.
by doing. I was always quite fiscally
imagine.
responsible, yeah, being a libertarian. The Austrian school of economics, the only sound form of economics there is. Everything else is just socialism, really. Whether it's Chicago, Keynesian, Marxism, all that, it's all just crap, really, right? But even so, you don't realise how much you're saving until you actually go and do it. So there you go, yeah. Well, we've been going around the country visiting people. Yeah, it's been great.
Sean, I was going to ask you a little bit about Jeff, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
If we just move slightly further away from the high
yeah. I mean, yeah, we can.
Admitting that you were wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry, the meta science is just a bit loud today.
The meta science is always powerful, and also you've got to do a drinking game. Every time he says meta science, you have to drink.
Oh my god,
you get smashed. So, but yeah,
that's death.
So,
yeah, tell us about Jeff. How you met him?
Jeff, great guy. I met him long ago in the before time, BC, before COVID. At the time, I was standing for election. There was a parliamentary by-election, 2018, Lewisham East. It's also the first day I also met David Curtin. He stood for UKIP as a candidate. I stood for the Libertarian Party. Jeff Wyatt was the deputy leader of For Britain. And Anne-Marie Waters was the candidate, the leader. But he was deputy leader. He was there supporting her. And we all met, me, David and Jeff, met all on the same day. And basically what happened was there was a hustings, and it was fascistically shut down by an Antifa-like group called Stand Up to Racism. Ironically, they're racists. And then because they were protesting against Anne-Marie Waters, she didn't even show up. So I knew Catford really well. It was in one of the buildings in Catford, and I said, no, we're not going to let. I just gave a speech about freedom of speech, and I said, hey, isn't it ironic the police have now showed up and just said that we're shutting down the event after I've given a speech about that. Then we went around the corner to a pub, to Wetherspoon's pub, and only the UKIP contingent, obviously Democrats and veterans, and the Monster Raven Looney Party showed up, and then we continued the hustings, and we got quite drunk, and that was it. That's the first time I met Jeff. And then years later, you were here. I called it the original 100 about how long was it ago? Just over 2 years ago now. 2020, it was September. We came here, and I was a little bit late coming from work, and I was coming from over here, but I could see in the distance that all the police were starting to tackle people down, and that's how I knew we were really in trouble, because when you're getting arrested at Speaker's Corner for speaking, keeping in mind people like Lenin have spoke here, Pol Pot, Oswald Mosley, Lenin, Karl Marx, Tony Robinson, all these people were spoken, and they'd never really had any issues, and they've still got away, but I knew we were in trouble.
Abu Hamza as well.
Abu Hamza, all of these people were spoken, right? And they've just been allowed to do it. But people just saying, we think these lockdowns are quite a bad idea. And then they were getting tackled down for it by the police. I'm sure you remember, you were obviously one of those people manhandled. But Jeff, I think, was possibly the first ever person arrested in the entire freedom movement. I call it freedom community now, because we've evolved from a movement, we're now a community, because we're starting up our own businesses, etc. He was possibly the first person ever arrested in the movement, the community, and that's when I knew we were in big trouble, and then that's why we had to move on and start. But yeah, that's when I was so glad to see Jeff, because when I was turning up to the anti-lockdown, this protest that we had, who's actually going to be here, and obviously Ramis, Fiona, Nacho, he was also arrested, so it was all, I call it the original one. Oh yeah, that's where it all began from. So really, it's that seed, and that was sort of Jeff is like a representation of. God bless his soul. I mean, I still can't believe he's gone. I still think he's just going to turn up. He's just going to come out he's going to come from the distance and go, oh, it was all a joke. I really can't. I went to his funeral as well with Milton Keynes. I just can't believe that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Oh man.
So yeah, there you go. What's going on? Wait, you live streaming now? What's going on with this channel, mate? It's like the most dormant channel I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, basically, Well, we've been busy with some of the other stuff that we've been doing. But yeah,
What can you tell us then? What's going on with this?
Okay, 1 second. We're gonna give you both of these streams, right? And you're gonna look after them.
No, what can you say? What can you?
What can I say? What can I say? I'm not
Need to
saying.
know basis.
I'm not saying anything to Netflix. I'll tell you all. Are you going to the pub afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just tell you everything at the pub.
Okay, I'll wait. Okay, it's need to know basis, guys. But anyway, so what can you say about it?
Okay. Right. Are you getting the right angle on
No, I don't know. I can't see the. Aha, yes, that's it there. Okay.
Is that right? Now you've got to triangulate between the three cameras.
Yeah. Go on, don't worry. What? Okay.
So I met Jeff. It must have been either 2016 or 2017 when they began to sell out our vote to be an independent country, to leave the EU dictatorship and to run our own country, control our borders, control our money and everything like that. I remember that. I remember that day when the vote came in and everyone was, singing and dancing, and we had champagne and everyone was celebrating. I remember literally that day out campaigning, putting the leaflets in, saying, no, we've got to get out, we've got to have our freedom, this is what millions of people died for.
Yeah.
And there was this fear, you get to the end of it and suddenly you just have this moment of, okay, well, what if we lose? If we lose, that's it, our democracy is gone. And we all had this sort of moment of, oh no. And then we won. But then you saw the government and you saw the corrupt people in the state just say, okay, well, you voted wrong. Well, yes, you voted leave, but what does leave mean? It's like, maybe if we had a thing like a dictionary or something, then we could work it out. And they just completely patronised people. They called us scum, they called us bigots, they called us racist, they called us idiots, they called us uneducated, they said we're peasants, they said we're working class, they said we were deplorable. Why? Because we wanted to have our freedom, because we wanted to control our own country. More than that, just control our own lives. And so I went down outside the carriage gate outside Parliament, and I had my sign from Vote Leave, and I edited it, because loads of people did that, and I stuck on we, and it said vote, and I stuck on a D, voted leave, right? And it was all wonky and everything, because the sign is already made up. And I met Jeff down there, and Jeff was saying, look at our history, and he was always talking about the Magna Carta, he was always talking about our freedoms and our fundamental rights. He was saying, what they're doing is unconstitutional. Not only should we not have been taken into this corrupt project in the first place, but we never should have, the idea that we vote to leave, right? You've got the biggest vote in the whole of British history, and they don't let us leave. It's pure corruption. And I remember his spirit then, and he was one of the great people. He'd come down and he really put in effort, and he was just lovely. It was lovely to be around, and we built a community. That's where I met people like Eleanor and Marco, and these are people that I've known for 5 years now. And it's weird because those are the people who, when this whole lockdown thing started, those are the people I started talking to. And actually, funnily, when this started, there were a few people in the Brexit groups who went, oh no, we must obey and conform. And I was just like, no, this is nonsense, in the little WhatsApp groups that we had. And Jeff came out, and Jeff was like, no, this is all nonsense, this is ridiculous, we can't be having it.
No shit's given.
And then, we started speaking more and more. And coming out and seeing him. And when I started off Resistance GB, there were two groups that I really, I had to, pass on the videos, because it's all word of mouth. We didn't have money for advertising. So those were the Brexit groups, and those were Julian Assange groups, and it was people like Jeff talking about what we were doing, talking about what we were showing, sharing it out, that helped us, you know, report to hundreds of thousands or millions of people what's been going on here. And it just amazes me. You know, he was just an average bloke from Milton Keynes, and he always said,
well, I wouldn't say average. I mean, he was a GP Cup race car winner. You know what I mean? He was a top guy. He was quite an extraordinary guy even before the Brexit stuff.
I know, but he comes from Milton Keynes, for God's sake, you know. And he said, "Look, I'm just a normal man." He was just a normal man who wanted to live his life, and the government kept getting in his way. And it's seeing people like him fighting back that gives us inspiration to fight back as well. You know, I don't think I could have gone through all of this and kept reporting on everything that was going on without seeing people like Jeff and Piers like getting harassed and bundled into vans, because I know that if they can do it, then I can do it. And England expects every man to do his duty.
Exactly. I agree. But the great guy.
Sorry, I've probably gone on too long.
No. I'm used to you rambling, Will. I go to my happy place whenever you talk.
Well, maybe we should. Oh, and one thing that you might not know.
Go on.
Is Owen messaged me, right? And,
funny, people are mentioning him in the chat. Apparently, someone, Len Lewup, says Owen works for Channel 4 now. I don't think so, but yeah, go on.
Owen messaged
Got to be a job,
And he actually, you know, he goes cycling. He actually cycled and he went past Salisbury Cathedral. Right?
Yes, right. Yeah, I've seen this. I know what you're talking about.
And
But do explain that.
He went into Salisbury Cathedral and they've got a copy of the Magna Carta.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's a big display there.
Yeah.
And guess who's on the display talking about the Magna Carta?
Jeff Wyatt. Yeah, I know. That's the nearest thing. That's like synchronicity, sort of destiny, universe sort of stuff, right? You've got. That's the nearest thing we'll ever have to a statue being made about it. You know that, right? Because all of this, the way that it's going, history's going to be totally rewritten. I don't even acknowledge that we had like 1 million people, at least 1 million. I'll say it's the biggest march in UK history. It's not the Iraq one. I reckon we are the biggest march, right? But the history books right now don't say anything about, a couple of thousand people turned up. You know, that's what they say, don't they? But that's the nearest thing we're ever going to get to immortalisation in terms of statue and stuff like that. The fact that he's got his photograph. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, don't get me wrong, I hope for the best, right? But that right now he's immortalised next to the Magna Carta, the thing that he loved. I mean, that's you know what I mean, that's quite deep, you know what I mean? That's quite like, it's sort of like the universe has planned that, you know, that he loved the Magna Carta, and then by sheer chance and all that happening, like, you know what I mean? That's just like, it's like the universe has or something has prepared that to, you know, a higher power has like made that occur. It's just crazy that's what's happened, but there you go. So I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because people want me to go walk around. They're probably sick of you, Will. They're sick of you, but I'm going to go have a chat with people. Thank you very much for saying some kind words. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to go around. Cheers.
Hi everybody, great to have you all here. If everyone can make their way over towards us, we're going to start some speeches now. My God, you did what you were asked to do. That is amazing. Which is brilliant. Keep doing it. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Kira, who's organised this event today, and we all know why we're here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name, for those of you that don't know me, is Kira McCallum. And like so many of you here today, I was a friend of Jeff Wyatt. I'd like to welcome you, and especially those that have travelled a great distance to be here, and to stand in Hyde Park on this autumn's day. I know that we have people with us from all over the country, and I think Jeff would be incredibly touched by the fact that so many of you have come along to honour his memory and to pay tribute to him today. I'd like to thank the people that are live streaming this memorial and would take this opportunity to welcome those who could not attend today in person, but who will be watching online. I would like to extend a particularly warm welcome today to both Lucy, Jeff's daughter, and Sasha, his partner, who are here with us today. When I set about organising this very simple memorial to Jeff, it seemed only right somehow to be here at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, where the freedom movement essentially began, what seems almost like a lifetime ago, and where Jeff had the rather dubious honour of being only the second person in the country to be arrested under the egregious coronavirus regulations 2020. So for Jeff, things in a way have come full circle. It started here, and very sadly, it will end here. As I look around, I see many familiar faces. Many people that marched alongside Jeff and his famous huge placards on protest. Many people that stood shoulder to shoulder with Jeff as they were attacked by the police, acting as thuggish agents of the state instead of protectors of the people. I see many people that spoke on the same platform as Jeff in various towns and countries and cities all over England, and many people who were inspired by Jeff to join the freedom movement. The movement itself is a disparate group of people from all walks of life, all ages, all races, all religions, all social classes and political persuasions. We might never have met each other had fate not intervened and brought us together. But we each and every one of us share something that is special and uncommon. And that is the ability to see through the lies and propaganda that we have been bombarded with in these past few years. Equally, we share a love for freedom, truth, and justice. And from that stems a burning desire to fight against the absolute evil of the tyranny and techno-fascism that both the Great Reset and the New World Order represent.
Hear, hear.
The bonds that we share are strong and have been forged in a very short time, even if we don't. We have found our tribe. And for those of us that have lost family members and friends because they mistakenly believe we are no more than deranged conspiracy theorists, this coming together of awake people is incredibly important and not to be dismissed by defeatist tropes such as, but nothing has been achieved. If this really was the case and our protests have been for nothing, then why is the government hell-bent into bringing into law the draconian public order bill? We may not have achieved all we would have wanted to, but what we have done at the very least is to have brought like-minded people together and given them a voice. And we have started a great awakening, which can only gain more and more momentum as time goes on. Never forgetting that once people are awake, they cannot go back to sleep. And all it will take for this nightmare to ease is for more people to join us in simply saying, No, no, we will not comply.
Resist, defy, do not comply. Resist, defy, do not comply.
Thank you. Jeff was a unifying force, and it would mean a great deal to him that today there are people here representing many different parts of the resistance movement. Our enemies want us divided, of course, for when we are busy fighting each other, we are not coming together as a unified force to fight them, the shadowy people in the background, pulling the strings of the puppets in our government and conspiring to control us in every conceivable way, using false narratives such as COVID-19, man-made climate change and Ukraine, whilst pretending all the while that what is being done is really for our benefit and that of the community as a whole. The excuse of every tyrant that has ever lived. Jeff and I talked about how a life enslaved in the totalitarian dystopia the so-called elites have planned for us is a life simply not worth living, and that come what may, we would fight to the end on the basis that we would rather, both literally and metaphorically, die on our feet rather than live on our knees. Jeff led by example in this regard. He was an absolute warrior, a fearless, proud Englishman, a true patriot who loved his country and hated what was happening to it. Jeff was both a natural leader and an eloquent speaker. He was friendly, kind, and made time for everybody he met. He had courage in spades, an indomitable spirit, fortitude, and most of all, passion. Before he entered politics, Jeff had been a very successful international racing driver and a businessman, and he could have easily retreated these past few tumultuous years to enjoy a quiet, very comfortable life with Sasha, living in the countryside, walking his dogs, and taking his beloved classic cars to rallies and shows. But instead, he chose to devote a lot of time to being out in the streets with us. Jeff was always in his element at protests and rallies, and especially when he had a mic in his hand and was haranguing the powers that be. Or for that matter, any unfortunate policeman that happened to stray into his path when he was speaking. History will undoubtedly record that despite being in turn ridiculed, vilified, and discriminated against, it is we who have right on our side. And history will show the large part that Jeff played in the freedom movement in England. Jeff's very sudden, untimely, and I believe entirely preventable death at the hands of the NHS has devastated many of us on a personal level. And his death will also leave a huge void in the movement as a whole. Jeff was very much a force of nature, certainly never short of an opinion or two, and had so much more life to live, and so much more to do. And the fact that his time with us was cut so very short is indeed a tragedy. But I believe that Jeff's spirit will live on in the movement. Yes. And I, for one, will miss him more than I can say. In the short time we knew each other, Jeff became like a big brother to me. We teased each other mercilessly. We didn't agree on everything, but we always had each other's backs. I will never forget his friendship and support, or the role he played in fighting for freedom and against tyranny. Surely the best tribute we can ever make to Jeff is to vow to continue the fight in his honour and to push on. And we push on regardless of how battle-weary so many of us are. It is no exaggeration to say that the struggle we face is one of truly epic proportions. The stakes could not be higher, because we are fighting possibly the greatest battle of all against the forces and evil and darkness for the very soul of humanity itself. We can't give up, and we won't give up. And that is exactly what Jeff would have wanted. Thank you. Thank you very much. This memorial today is very simple, as you can all see. There are no bells and whistles. We don't have a fancy stage or a sound system or anything like that. But what we do have today is the most important thing, because we have you here. And the people make the movement. We are the movement. We are family. We all have found our tribe. I'm very anxious today that people in the movement who don't ordinarily speak have a chance to say a few words, if they wish, about Jeff. Obviously, we have a number of the well-known faces in the movement here. We have Nigel on my left from World Freedom Alliance, and Piers needs no introduction, and we have Fiona and other people here today. But I really would like today to be about not just hearing from the well-known, more prominent people in the movement, but I'd like to hear from anybody else who was maybe inspired by Jeff, or who has a funny story about Jeff, because there'll be a lot of them, but anybody who just wants to pay tribute to Jeff and to honour. So my idea was simply this, that we have somebody who's well known for the movement to speak, and then interspersed with that, with well-known people, we have anybody else that would like to come and say a few words. So I don't want anybody to feel press-ganged. I have a few people that I know want to speak, and I'm going to kick off with Nigel from World Freedom Alliance. But if anybody else would like to speak, if they'd like to please come down to the front, or maybe just along here and stand with me. And then what I would say is, because I think there would be rather a large number of people that maybe want to say a few words about Jeff, maybe if you could kindly limit what you have to say to a couple of minutes, just to give everybody a chance to speak that would like to speak, that would be great. Before I do that, I'd just like to say there are a few people that wanted to be here today and unfortunately can't. I'm particularly sorry that John O'Looney can't be here today. Unfortunately, his funeral business is so busy, and we all know why, unfortunately, that he's having to perform a funeral on a Saturday, which he would normally not do. And he's very sorry that he can't be here today. And I'm sure it gave great comfort to Sasha and to Lucy and to all of us that Jeff was in such good hands with John, who obviously officiated at Jeff's funeral, which was held on Monday. Thank you. I've also had apologies from Kate Shamrani, who would have liked to have been here today. So I think without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone over with great relief. This is my first bit of public speaking, and I did this for Jeff. Jeff actually asked me to take the mic on many occasions and talk about my work. And in particular the fact that along with a colleague, Melinda Main, I took a case to the International Criminal Court last year against the government and all its advisors for genocide. I never did actually take the mic or give speeches, traumatised as I had been by the fact I was going to be reading a lesson in the church. I memorised a lot of the piece, but not all of it. Got up, was called, went up, climbed up to the pulpit, peered over the top, only to find the vicar had forgotten to leave the Bible with the bookmark in the right place. And I was staring at some piece of text in the Bible that I'd never seen in my life before and had nothing to do with the nativity story. And I spent what seemed like hours just staring blankly into space, absolutely terrified, and not knowing what to do. So I did the only thing reasonable in the circumstances and burst into tears. So anyway, that was the beginning and that was the end of my public speaking until now. So I think if Jeff was here, well, if he was looking down, he'd probably be thinking, bloody hell, Cara, did I really have to die before you took the mic? Knowing Jeff's sense of humour, I'm sure that's what he would be saying, but the answer would be, actually, yes, Jeff, you did, because this in itself, me speaking, is a tribute to Jeff. So, having said without further ado and then waffled, I'm now going to pass the mic to Nigel.
Thank you, Kira. Kira sent me that on WhatsApp the other night, and I thought there's nothing left to say. She's said everything in there. It's absolutely brilliant. That was a brilliant speech. Thank you so much. Now, I would have said that I was an osteopath last week, but I'm not an osteopath anymore. I'm not allowed to call myself an osteopath. I came off the register. Reason being that the General Osteopathic Council has gone along with all the COVID bullshit. And like a lot of practitioners all around the world, I thought rather than having them haranguing me every 5 minutes, I'm going to come off the register. I'm not an osteopath, but I have a first-class master's degree in osteopathy. I also am the Chief Operations Officer for my sins for the World Freedom Alliance. And if we think back 2 years ago when the World Freedom Alliance happened, when we started in Stockholm, we used to meet here. We used to meet here and we were surrounded by TSG. Now, I haven't given a speech yet where I haven't burst into tears. And what I said in Denmark was, anyone who's not crying about this situation is truly fucked up. Because what is happening out there? It looks as if it's gone calm, it looks as if it's gone quiet, but it hasn't. I'm preaching to the converted here, but there'll be people watching the video who don't know this. It looks as if things have gone quiet because people aren't wearing so many masks. There are not TSG watching us, but they're watching us, don't you worry. They'll be watching us on cameras, they'll be watching us on our phones. They want to know what we're doing. I was listening to the James Corbett report the other day, and he was saying, and I trust James Corbett because he researches everything. He was saying that they had planned lockdown to last till 2030. Now this bit's going to make me cry because the reason they didn't do that, is because of you. The reason they couldn't do that, it's because the biggest march I was on here in London had 2 million people on it. Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. The BBC said it was 30,000. There were 2 million people marching through London, and it scared the shit out of them. So, anyone who says what we're doing is not working is lying. What we're doing is scaring the hell out of them. Now, one of the iconic moments for me was when I went into the Murderers pub in Norwich with a little camera crew around me. It was a big setup, obviously. And I said, can I come in? They said, of course you can. I said, I'm not vaccinated. And then we had a bit of an argument. Jeff saw that video, and so did lots of other people around the world, and said, can I come to Norwich? We need a protest. Piers came as well. So the three of us did a protest at the Murderers pub. The Murderers wanted you to go in with a it is the name of the pub. You couldn't make these things up, could you? Now, you have to have a vaccine certificate. You had to then have a vaccine certificate to go in to the Murderers. I am not an osteopath, but I do osteopathy. And my patient was telling me last week, her daughter works in the children's ward. This is going to make me cry too. They have never known so many sick babies.
That's completely true.
They have never known so many sick babies in hospital. They're dying, they're getting illnesses, and why was Jeff out on the streets with his loudspeaker making a tit of himself? Because of those kids. He wanted to save those kids. He wanted to protect our freedom. That's why he came up to Norwich that day, and why me, him and Piers went down to the G7 in Oxford that day and stood there and were mocked and vilified by people and laughed at for being idiots. Why 2 of my children wouldn't speak to me for 2 years because I'm batshit crazy. I'm not batshit crazy, and nor was Jeff. We just knew what was going to happen. Now, we ain't seen nothing yet. People still think it's about COVID and vaccines. That was step 1. We've now got the war in Ukraine. We're likely to have a war between China and Taiwan. We're likely to have central bank digital currencies which are going to track everything you do. A guy was right to pick me up just now here. They're not accepting cash in this bureau. I needed a cup of coffee. I've travelled down from Norwich, so I bought one with my credit card. We shouldn't be doing that. We must stop supporting businesses that don't support cash. We must come off YouTube and Facebook. I had thousands of whatever they are supporters on Facebook. I stopped using Facebook. They were banning me, I banned them. I banned YouTube. So people are often saying to me, well, Dolores Cahill, she's not doing anything anymore. That woman's indomitable, she's like Jeff. But she's been banned from YouTube, banned from Facebook, so we can't get the stuff out there. Get on Telegram, because you'll see the stuff on there. Yeah. Jeff Wyatt is why I'm here. The reason I'm here for Jeff Wyatt, and this is a beautiful story, I was walking through Norwich after the Murderers rally, and one of my friends, a socialist worker, she was sat at a little stool, and she said, Nigel, I saw you with that guy Jeff Wyatt. I said, yeah. She said, no, she didn't actually say that. No, she said, why did you take a stand with that awful right-wing fascist man? And I said, you can't call Piers Corbyn a right-wing fascist. I don't know if she laughed or not because she's wearing a bloody mask. So this socialist worker was confronting me over being on a platform with Jeff, and I just looked at her and said, he knows more about freedom than you do, and I'm afraid we're not friends anymore. And that's happened with most of my friends. I think Jeff probably, I've been shut off. I think Jeff probably had the same thing. We lost our friends, and in my case, lost half of my family who will not speak to Mad Uncle Nigel or Mad Daddy. But I'm not going to stop. Kira said it. We're not going to stop. One of the things I've said in all my speeches, during lockdown, when everyone was saying you can't travel, I travelled to Stockholm a couple of times, I travelled to Copenhagen a couple of times, travelled to Berlin, and in every speech I said this, I have some bad news for you. You are going to die. We are all going to die. We get to choose whether we die as a sheep or whether we die as a lion. Jeff Wyatt died a lion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Now, is there anybody that isn't a prominent member of the movement that would like to speak? The lady here would like to come over? And perhaps... Oh, I thought the mic had gone. Perhaps you'd just like to introduce yourself briefly and then say a few words.
Hi, I'm Catherine Armitage, and I work for a little magazine called Brighter Times. I met Jeff on the first day of January in 2021, and he was moving wood in the car park at Nash, and I asked him if he'd had a good Christmas, and he said he'd had the most challenging Christmas of his life, and things were very upsetting for him, he said. And I thought to myself, boy, this man is brave. He has the bravery to say what I couldn't admit to myself, that Christmas was highly depressing that year. And I echo Nigel's feelings, that I cry every day. Every day, and every day I laugh as well. And on my way down here, I cried for Jeff, and in the night I woke up and I cried for every single person that I feel I've ever known who has died. Typical of me, pressing the wrong things. So, yeah, I feel like this death of Jeff has triggered even more fight in me. I was always a workaholic, and now I'm a workaholic fighter, activist, and nothing will stop me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to pass the mic to Simone, who's going to speak on behalf of herself and is also going to speak on behalf of Kate Shamarani, who unfortunately is unwell, as I said earlier, and isn't able to be here. Simone.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organising. Wants to pay our respects to Jeff, who was such an incredible man and hugely inspiring. Kate Shamarani asked me to speak on her behalf. She's indisposed today, and I'm very happy to do so. And she spoke frequently with Jeff, as I did, and had a close friendship with him, and was hugely inspired by his work and dedication to the movement. I would like to read the armour of God from Ephesians, because this is something that I feel is fitting for today, and I hope you'll bear with me while I read this. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armour of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armour of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. And with this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. I'd just like to ask Hazel to speak. So, oh dear, I thought the mic had gone again. Hazel tells me that she was inspired by Jeff to be a part of the movement.
Oh, thank you.
Hi. Thank you for this opportunity to say a few words about what Jeff meant to me, and maybe others will identify with it as well. Do you want me to use that one? Ah, right. Okay. I can't claim to have been a good friend of Jeff's or to have had many conversations with him, as I only know him in the context of marches and protests. But to me, he was a central figure of the freedom movement already by the time I joined. I know now from day one. I also now know of his love of motor racing and that he carried on enjoying his life despite being acutely aware of what is happening, which to the likes of me is terrifying and is a lesson to us all. Be like Jeff and enjoy life as much as possible. Do what you are passionate about until your last day, as he did. Being terrified was not Jeff, though, from what I saw. He was also he was always a strong, steady figure, always composed. He was the man you could look to through the crowd to give you confidence to stand your ground. If I had ever seen Jeff look so much as anxious, it would have said to me, and others I'm sure, that the situation was the worst it could be, but I never saw that from him. I remember Jeff telling of when he was trapped with the rest of the protest crowd on one that got particularly nasty in Kensington. The police blocked the exit from the tube station at the top of the stairs, and a crush situation started to happen as people unknowingly pushed to get out. I would have been terrified again, and Jeff described a woman in front of him who was very afraid, so he put his arms around her and stood to protect her with his big frame from the crush behind. He was the type of man you would have wanted to be around in a crisis. Indeed, from a distance, Jeff was a bit like a father figure in the movement. Others would call it leadership. I was with Jeff on the last protest he attended, and that is why it was such a shock, because he was so strong and healthy, and it was less than a week before his passing. He gave a couple of great speeches, including an anecdote that made us all laugh about when he was queuing one time for a piece of cake. He got the feeling that they were going to refuse his cash payment, so he began to eat the cake as he waited in the queue. Upon reaching the front, he offered his cash, only to be proved right that they would only take card payment. He found it very funny when they took the half-eaten piece of cake off of him. I recently passed this story on in a conversation with some people who didn't know Jeff, as we were talking about resisting the onslaught of a cashless society. So you could say he is a legend, as no doubt his anecdotes and stories will live on. He will not be forgotten. One of the only pictures I have of me on protests is with Jeff on one of his hard-hitting placards. So to me, he is a symbol of this time in history and the struggle against tyranny. I remember Jeff as being dignified, well-respected and fearless. I recognise that the greatest loss is to Jeff's family. I can only imagine it to be overwhelming and devastating for them, and my heart goes out to them because it was such a shock as well. To people like myself and the freedom movement, he is a great loss and leaves a massive hole. Thank you, and rest in peace, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Hazel. I remember that was one of Jeff's favourite things to do, actually, was going into establishments that he thought might not take cash, order food, take a chunk out of it, and then walk out when they wouldn't take cash. I think our next speaker is going to be Dr. Neil McRae. Neil suffers from the same misfortune as I do, as having his name constantly mispronounced. He's often referred to as Niall McRae, but in actual fact the pronunciation should be Neil. In the same way, can I just say now that my name is Kara, not Kira, Kylie, Kiora, Kyra. I get everything. Even Jeff always managed to mangle my name somehow, but I forgave him for it. So without further ado, Niall.
Thank you, Kara.
Well, a well-known military strategy is that you choose your battles. And in May 2020, amidst this unprecedented lockdown, about 50 brave souls came here. They were outnumbered by police. To my shame, I stayed at home. I thought it was too soon, too hostile, too risky. But Jeff Wyatt, my good friend, had the courage and commitment, and he was undeterred. And I watched the live stream. I think it was Resistance GB, and I think we should give a round of applause to all the YouTubers, Wills, Cesar, Simon, who recorded our movement, which otherwise was ignored and later vilified by the mainstream media. And so I watched Jeff with his famous placard, Freedom Over Fear. I think somebody's got a copy of it. There it is. Targeted by Metropolitan Police officers. He was arrested and taken away in a van. And of course, many of us have also been arrested, or have been fined, or have been intimidated in some way by the police over the last 2.5 years. And we wear it as a badge of honour. That day in May 2020, when just a few of us were here, and not me, but hands up anyone that was there that day. Here you are. What, you mean you haven't all died of COVID yet? I thought you were all going to end up on a ventilator. That's what they said, didn't they? Right, well, yeah, I'm glad. Anyway, Speaker's Corner, as we all know, is world famous as the sanctuary of free speech. But the tyrants in government tried to shut it down. This was where, May 2020, when the Great Reset first met the Great Resist. The police were sent in to stop us. The TSG thugs beating people up. Randomly attacking people, women typically, grabbing people, forcing their face onto the ground. Now, where are the police today? Where are they? It's a shame they're not here, because I wanted to ask them some questions. I wanted to ask them why Jeff Wyatt was arrested in May 2020, why people here, some people here, were dragged onto the ground and had police sitting on top of them, doing something not far removed from what happened to George Floyd in America. Why was that policing happening just 2 or 3 weeks after Jeff was arrested and Piers was arrested here at Speaker's Corner? Black Lives Matter protests, facilitated by the police, encouraged by the authorities. They're having a laugh, aren't they?
100%, always.
Now, I want to end with where we go from here, how we continue Jeff's work. But firstly, can I just tell you a little anecdote that September, there was going to be a rejoin the EU rally. In fact, I think, yeah, and it was postponed because of the Queen's death. But Jeff and I were planning a counter-protest, and it was going to be, we were just going to stand there with some banners in a strategic position and a silent message, and the biggest banner was going to say, EU equals mandatory injections. Is that your ode to joy? And other ones saying things, for example, like, Waitrose must be quiet today. Of course, we didn't get the chance to do that, but I think I should tell you that after planning this, there was only going to be a small number of us, so we're going to keep it tight. And about 2 or 3 days before it was cancelled, Jeff was already wanting to amend the plans. He was saying, no, look, I think we should be marching in front of them with our banner. And before long, we're going to block the bloody road. Can you imagine Jeff staying quiet at a rally?
Never.
No, you can't. But Jeff's work must go on. And I think it's the 19th of November is the next big rally. Is that right? Well, we've got to make sure it's a big rally, and we need to beware. We need to beware because for the last 2.5 years, we've had these streets to ourselves, protesting against the COVID regime. We need to beware because there are protests already going on all around Europe, and those protests are a quite awkward mixture of people, and we're going to face the same problem here. We're going to face this on the 19th of November. There are people who want to change this into some divide and rule, leftist, anti-Tory. I've got no time for any politicians, by the way. I'm sure you don't either. But we mustn't let the Socialist Worker Party take prominence in our rallies. We mustn't let Antifa take our movement where we don't want it to go. We stand for the very opposite of the things that they stand for. We stand for freedom of speech. We stand for democracy. And we stand for all the things that were in the old normal that we liked. And I think we've realised over the last 2.5 years that there were things in the old normal that weren't right. And I think that COVID was not something which just came, the tyranny that came of COVID didn't happen overnight. This was primed over a long period of time. What we've got to do is stay united, not fall for the divide and rule tactics. And Jeff was one of the first people in our movement to say, all this left versus right thing, see people making this all political party. No, we don't want to stand with them. We want to unite, but we also need to beware. We also need to make sure that our rallies stay about freedom and about humanity. And with a very sad loss that we're here commemorating today, that of Jeff Wyatt, an inspirational leader, and let's take his work forward. Jeff Wyatt, a 21st century hero.
Thank you very much, Neil. Neil, of course, worked for a long time with Jeff before we knew him in the movement. Neil worked with him in Brexit and in other political spheres. Just before I ask Piers to take the mic, I'd like to give the mic to Jill. Jill was a very, very close friend of Jeff's, and Jill travelled with Jeff up and down the country to various rallies and spent a lot of time with Jeff.
Much like Kara, I'm not accustomed to public speaking. I didn't plan to say anything today, but I had Jeff in my mind, in my ear, just urging me, as he always did. And as Kara just said, I travelled with Jeff up and down the country, and I have to thank him for that, because I wouldn't have been able to do that. I made it today on my own steam to London for the first time without Jeff. He always reserved a seat in his car for me, and if I think back to 3 years ago, if someone said to me that I would be at a protest wielding a placard, walking around the streets of London, or indeed any other city or town up and down England, I would not have believed them. If somebody had said to me that I wouldn't have worn a mask and I would have challenged people, I would have spoken to the police, I would have resisted, I wouldn't have believed them. I was not somebody that could do that, but Jeff
showed me how to do that. Courage leads to courage, right? And that's what he did for me. And I just want to tell you one story about one of the marches that we went on. It was one of the really big London marches, and we'd arrived and there was just a sea of people, and the atmosphere is always amazing. I think you'll all agree that everyone is on a high. We're all united, fighting for the same thing. And I remember walking along with Jeff, carrying the placard, with all the horns going and everybody. And we were walking down here towards Speaker's Corner, and he turned to me and said, "There's just one thing missing, and that's Sasha and Lucy." So I'm getting all emotional now because it's so amazing that they're both here today to see what Jeff, Lucy's dad, Sasha's partner, is doing, and how he inspired people like me who don't like confrontation to stand up for your rights and for your freedom. So thank you, Jeff. I owe you, and I'm never going to be the same person again. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill, for these very heartfelt words. I'm now going to pass the mic over to Piers with some trepidation, I might say. But Piers has promised me he'll just restrict this part of things just to talking about Jeff.
Yes. So what Jeff would have wanted me to talk about? Well, fantastic you're all here. This is a brilliant thing for Jeff. But it's not the end for Jeff. Every 16th of September, every year, we'll have unity rallies in the name of Jeff. That was the day he died. Jeff Wyatt died on the 16th of September. So, how did I get to know a right-wing businessman from Milton Keynes? Well, the answer is, here, on the 16th of May, this year, I was arrested, and namely he was arrested shortly afterwards, and we know what followed. Millions eventually marched, including you, and the point is, had we not stood up then and you not marched, we wouldn't be here now. Jeff was an amazing campaigner and a unifying force. Right at the start, I talked to him, and although we had, differences, we agreed all these left and right divisions are complete nonsense, and the Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, Greens and the fake Labour left opposition, some of whom are more Starmer than Starmer, must all be thrown out. They are completely useless. All they do is follow each other. And Jeff, of course, was a unifying force. And well, another thing that united him and I could mention this, was he liked fast cars. And I have a Vauxhall Cavalier which currently owes £17,000 to Sadiq Khan and his cronies. And I'm happy to report that it will reach 108 miles an hour. And for the police listening, I wasn't driving, Governor. Right, but back to the unifying force. Jeff would not suffer fools gladly, and neither do I. But it was very important that when people engaged, he would engage with them. And recognise that if people were wrong before and change their minds and join the movement now, they must be welcomed 100% whatever they thought in the past. And I know another thing he would say is that we have very many differences within the movement, and we're not actually like-minded, we're like-purposed essentially, but all the different groups, and I'm one of them, lettheuklive.com and so forth, stopnewnormal.net, but we may march separately, but when the chips are down against the New World tyranny, we strike together! Okay, well, I shouldn't go on because I know a lot of people want to speak, but just two things I would mention. The movement needs to take up more and more things where the current useless people in Parliament have given up. We have to take the lead on the ground. I'm completely serious about this. On issues of the war. I mean, it's mad. The government's shoveling money into the war. You know, the war is a diversion. And we have to be clear, the 6 legs of the New World Tyranny, as Nigel mentioned, all have to be fought by us. They won't be fought by anyone else. We've got to stop the virus con, stop the climate con, stop the war con, halt all the jab programs now! Take down 5G and refuse all digital ID and keep cash. And on the issue of the jabbing and whether it's dangerous or not, we're going to be at Parliament on Monday, lots of people are, very good. But there's a call for an inquiry into whether or not the jab is dangerous. We know the jab is deadly! We do not need a government inquiry, which is just a cover-up and an excuse for a delay on doing anything. We want the jab centres closed down now! So I think I will end on that and say the way forward has to be what Jeff would have wanted, a great sort of federal movement around common, very basic demands, and people have their own ideas within that. Doesn't matter, as long as we, as I said, strike together. And there's new things happening in science, lots of new things happening. We've got to discuss those, but not let them divide us. And I will end with, I know what Jeff would have wanted us to say, and it is on my t-shirt: resist, defy, do not comply. Resist, defy, do not comply. Resist, defy, do not comply. Thank you very much. And I think Angela's going to come next because Mick wants to go after that. Is that all right?
I was just going to ask Amy to speak first.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought it was Angela.
Hello everybody, thank you so much. I just want to say I knew Jeff Wyatt. I think he was a gentle giant, a true gentleman, true English gentleman. And he actually came to my support without me asking him. It was back in 2018, I first noticed Jeff outside the House of Parliament when we were trying to convince the politicians to carry through the Brexit that we voted for. And he would be wandering in his Crusaders outfit, which was, it stood out greatly with his signs. And the thing is that for me, I was speaking out a little bit, and I got into a little bit of trouble with the law, and happened to be taken to court by Anna Soubry and the Queen, and I was tried in number 1 court at Westminster Magistrates for causing Anna Soubry harassment, alarm and distress, for calling her a traitor. I would not take a plea deal. I refused to plead guilty, and whilst I was on trial, I was not allowed to defend myself, and Anna Soubry had asked for a screen. She was very terrified of me. I know I'm very, very intimidating. I can tell, very towering. And anyway, I was defending myself, not pleading guilty, and during the trial, it just so happened that we had a general election, and it was suggested to me that I may run for office against Anna Soubry in her constituency, and I thought that was a great idea because obviously it's very difficult to catch politicians, to talk to them. They always run away, and unfortunately I'm a bit limited. And I thought if I run for office, then she'll have to talk to me because she'll have to debate me. Oh, a genius. But unfortunately, the electoral law was broken, and the prosecution found out and notified the judge, and they reopened the case to try me to show bad something or other behaviour. I mean, it was all very bizarre, and so I was prohibited from campaigning in Broxtowe. The judge, I couldn't mention Anna Soubry's name, I couldn't say anything about her, and much to my amazement and without asking, I saw footage on YouTube of Jeff Wyatt dressed in his Crusaders outfit in the middle of Broxtowe, standing up to the police, and campaigning for me. And it was just the most amazing thing. And it's always a good one to get taken away. I'm so sorry. I thought I was going to keep it together, but Jeff was such a lovely man, and I'll miss him greatly, but his legacy will live on forever. God bless you, Jeff. A true English hero. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Amy. I'd just like to ask Fiona to come and say a few words now, please.
So, am I really loud? I just want to say, first of all, to Lucy and Sasha, that you should be so proud of Jeff, because he saved so many lives, and what he was doing, and I can't remember if it was Nigel that said about, or Piers, I can't remember, but that we're all going to die, but he died a lion, and he did it for us, and he did it for humanity, so just be really proud, and I'm so glad to see you here today. And I will say as well, Sasha, that I was probably the third person, I think, arrested here on the 20th of May, the same day as Jeff. And I remember seeing him get arrested and thinking, that big tall silver fox is getting arrested. He was a good looking man, can't deny it. But he was always really supportive, and he was always unifying, and he did say it how it was. He was probably one of the only people that didn't really want to buy me a drink. Always told me not to drink, and I'm not drinking now, so thanks, Jeff. But yeah, he was unifying when he was here, and I just want to echo what. So I hope that we can carry on this unity. And Jeff was all for protesting, and I hope the numbers, like that Niall said, do go back up, because it's so important that we take back the streets and we take back our lives, because we've got so much to fight for, and that's what Jeff was fighting for. So I just want to thank you, Jeff, and thank you all.
Thank you very much, Fiona. And Fiona's echoed something which I referenced in my short address earlier, which was the whole idea of unity. We're never going to agree about everything. We know that. Even Jeff and I didn't agree about everything, and we were great pals. But what we can agree on are the most important things that we are fighting against. And I think too often recently that we become distracted by egos, by politics, and by getting into sort of esoteric discussions about terrain theory versus germ theory or whatever. Right now, these things don't matter, because we have this massive fight on our hands. So I would certainly echo the sentiment that we should try and come together as much as we possibly can. And as I said in my short speech, I think Jeff would have been incredibly pleased to have so many people here representing different parts of the movement, who perhaps haven't seen eye to eye some of the time, and that is just great, because Jeff was a unifying force. But anyway, I'd like to pass the mic over to Angela, who'd like to say a few words.
Hello, my name's Angela. I earned my ticket to meet Jeff through jumping over the gates of the Spy-Bee and Conservative headquarters and pressing the green button when the security man wasn't watching and letting Piers' crowd in. Where they've from there they created a massive psychological attack on the British people, one that I've never read about in history, and has divided families. And one thing, when I did meet Jeff in Milton Keynes with my son and everything, we were kind of showing our solidarity with Australia, and we came out with the Australian flag on a poster. My son had coloured it all in, and we were saying we stand with Australia, because in Melbourne it was horrendous. They locked everybody up. And at a meeting afterwards, because Jeff had a friend in Australia, he read out an email, and he was very choked up when he read this email out, because he couldn't believe, obviously his friend understood what was going on, but many people didn't, and they were caught up in the mass hysteria and the mass psychosis, as you could call it, and he was locked up and people were committing suicide. The damage caused, I mean, it was horrendous. He was such a sensitive guy. We got onto the subject of families, because their technique with this psychological manipulation of divide and conquer had worked so well that families weren't talking to each other. And I know I mentioned about my parents because it was on my mind at the time. I could not get them around to seeing that this jab was going to kill them. They're now on their 4th and the flu vaccine. But he mentioned his daughter, and I could see the pain in his face, because and I think we've all had experience of that. And in many ways I wish I'd talked to him more, because when I looked at the pictures of his daughter and I looked at the pictures of his life and in the obituary, which is sad because really we used to talk a lot of this, COVID, of, you know, what's going on, but I didn't actually get to understand him as a sort of 4-dimensional person. You know, his history before, his racing, that he was talented, he kept quiet about it, and it was sad to sort of learn these things, not directly from him, but like after his death. And I find it very sad as well that we go through life. I've always had this motto, carpe diem, seize the day. And in many ways, his death, you know, I can relate to it. I like rock climbing. I fell off the wall the other day. I felt my spine jacked. He was out motor racing and he was living in the moment. So although it's such a sad loss, I try to comfort myself with the thought that he was doing something he loved. And so I loved his protest because he was very proactive, and I'm a lawful rebel, and so was he. Unlawful rebel, whatever. Lawful rebellion. It's lawful. They're the unlawful ones. We are rebelling against the unlawful. The courts, all the rest of them, are unlawful. And so like I understood. He you know, he was brave. He was ostracised in village, from what I understand, but he stayed there. He didn't move out. He didn't run away from it. He just stood his ground. It was amazing like that. But anyway, on the second protest, I moved some PCR tests because I was pissed off with them, because effectively they were what the government used to lock us down, because they said, oh, if you've got a positive PCR test that can be fraudulently cycled up, and so we got positive cases, this case-demic, all these people with COVID, they were, well, we're going to have to keep them locked up until we jab them. The jab was always what it was all about, obviously, about killing people, depopulation, Agenda 2030. And I wanted to highlight the fact that these PCR tests were a load of rubbish, so I put them in the rubbish. I was called in and questioned about it. I got off theft, but ironically, Jeff's death coincided with the police arriving at my door and being taken into a cell for, I think it was over 24 hours in the end. And apparently a summons had been written out, but I hadn't received it, and now I'm sort of dealing with court in terms of its criminal damage. But like, it's kind of sweet in a way, because it feels like a continuation of my relationship with Jeff, even though he's dead now. It's like he's still there on my shoulder, even in the cell. I could see him smiling at me. And I would have come down with a placard, because one of his placards was BBC are a bunch of wokers. And I thought that was a brilliant one, and I'm reading Beyond Woke, so Jeff, if you're up there, it's a really good book. And I just, as I say, I feel sad that I didn't say what a fantastic guy he was when he was alive to his face, and I just hope maybe he can hear me somewhere.
Thank you very much, Angela. Before we go to our next speaker, who rejoices in the wonderful name of Nick the Ticket, to my right, I would just like to extend a very special welcome to Ron, who I hope he doesn't mind me saying, Ron is 101, soon to be 102. And Ron, you're an inspiration. So thank you very much indeed for being here today. Thank you. So Mick, if you'd like to take the mic, thank you.
Thanks very much. Keep going on, Ron. Keep going on. Right, Lucy, we met the other week, fantastic. Sasha, and we all seen each other on Monday. John O'Looney, a round of applause for John O'Looney. Fantastic, he done a few on Monday, Stanley Stratford. It was a great sender for a great man. And Jeff, my friend, known him the last couple of years or more. I'm Mick the Ticket, but he never called me that. We're in daily contact. I'm Mick Clifford to him, that was it, Mick Clifford. But Mick the Ticket, whatever. By the way, thank you, Ange. I met you that day when you chucked the rubbish in the rubbish bin in Milton Keynes. Fantastic. Great day. 29th of December, Jeff organised it. Yeah, and the crack was, I ain't going to speak long because other people want to speak on that, but the crack was this. We got word. He came out with Leicester recently. I've got him to come out with Leicester. I do things in Leicester, put people on and that, you know. He came up a couple of months back, and he said it wasn't planned. He gave a little smirk. It was bleeding planned. I knew about it before he done it. The test centre, it was planned. But we heard Boris Johnson had been there. He's there. He's in MK today. God, we got to get down there. We missed him. Anyway, we had a... it was all over the world, the news story about us going into that test centre, whatever. Then we went to MK Theatreland. And you could only go in if you took the poisonation. That was the deal, right, yeah? We weren't having it. I think Wayne pushed past the door first. Yeah, big fella with it, mate. Wayne and Darren, our friend Darren from Leighton Buzzard. And we all went in, Paul's went in, and there was the people above. They were wearing masks. And they go like that to us up and high up, and some were chucking ice creams. I wish I caught one, I was quite hungry, but there you go, they were trying to mock us. And the security on the door, they whispered to us, we're on your side, That's right, yeah, remember. Yeah, inside job, yeah, we had an inside job there, Wayne. Listen, I want to say, Jeff Wyatt, a lion in this movement. And we need a Jeff Wyatt day every year to remember this great man. Am I right? Say yeah! Am I right? Say yeah! One more time! Jeff Wyatt, say yeah! Right, we're going to do that, Jeff Wyatt Day. That man, they've got to learn, the kids of the future, when we get through this madness, we have to win. And he's going to go down as, he's an English lion, and he really is, you know. I'm a Paddy, I'm born in London, but I'm a Paddy. But you know what? English, Irish, Scotch and Welsh, black and white unite. Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Sikh, everyone, warrior jazz. We stand together. Inside, outside, lockdown, shutdown. It was a global coup, and we've got to stand up for the rebranded fleet and new world order. We're going to win this. Get up, stand up. Need the ticket. Over and out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Mick. Right, we're just going to have Danny Rampling to say a few words, and then Ramesh, and then Wilsey, and then Mick from Official Voice. So, Danny, may I pass the mic over to you, please?
Thank you, yeah. Jeff asked me a couple of times at rallies. One of them was at Canada House and the other one in Brighton. Danny, get on and take the mic. Let's hear you talk. But I'm going to say a few words today because, Jeff is here in spirit with us today. And what magnetic energy Jeff Wyatt had and the effect on the movement and the freedom movement, so many good people. And Jeff transcended the divide. And there is divide in this movement, unfortunately, that needs to be repaired. We are one. We are all fighting for the same cause, and we need to transcend these divisions. And that's what Jeff really upheld. You know, he supported all the different groups and all the rallies. And I think we're all very thankful that we got to know Jeff. Some of us, we may have only spoke to him for 5 minutes or once at a rally, but we all felt as if we knew Jeff. You know, he was a very prominent figure, fearless, courageous. He was a general within this movement, a real figurehead, and it does leave a gaping hole, but we will continue in the spirit of Jeff. We all want this to end, and we all want to get up one day and say, thank God that is over, because we'll continue this fight until the very end. And that's what we do from day to day. We get up, whether we just do an hour or we do campaigning all day, and we're out doing outreach. We're all doing something and contributing in our own way, and that's what this is about. But we want this fight to end. It's exhausting, it's tiring, but we cannot give up, and we will not give up. We are here for the long haul, however long this takes, and we will continue the spirit of Jeff Wyatt, a great man, an absolute diamond. And I'm really thankful that I got to know Jeff over the last year, and a very wise man on politics, business and common law in particular. Very knowledgeable man, a great man. So let's give 3 cheers for Jeff Wyatt in tribute. For Jeff Wyatt. Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danny. I'd like to ask Ramesh if you'd like to come over and say a few words. Ramesh?
I wait until we don't miss her. Hello, guys. No, it's not don't take the vaccine. It's, you know, I'm here for Jeff today. I want to call 2 people. I want to call Kelly and I want to call Nacho, if they want to come and speak with me. Yeah. All right, so you guys know these people? Yes. You should know these people, because every time I do an interview, I always call these people name, you know. I always call Pierre's name. There's so many of us, you know. But I remember when we sit down in a room and we decided we're going to take it on the street. I got some footage from the 16th of May 2020 with Piers and Jeff Wyatt. I still got those videos when you guys was fighting with the police, and I was sitting over there watching everything, you know. And then I think 2 weeks after, I meet these guys, and they was taking numbers and names, and I basically tell them what I came here for. And I never really have much conversation with Jeff, but Jeff was always with his board, and he's always walking with us. He's not a man of many words. He doesn't really speak much. And trust me, I don't speak much neither. I just do what I needed to do, you know. But yeah, I couldn't miss this, you know. Even though I had some work to do today, I canceled it, you know, just to come and pay my respect, because we lost a strong brother, but we didn't really lose a strong brother, you know. And the more and more, for me personally, I don't know if you guys remember, but when we was in that room and we was introducing ourselves, there were 7 of us. I remember I told you guys I'm here doing God's work. It was me and a guy named Colin, which is your friend, that was religious, that was more religious than everybody, like believe in God. And I said I'm here because of Revelations 13 verse 16 to 18. Now you must be wondering why I'm saying that, but I'm saying that because hopefully in like 1 year time I'll be baptized, and in my religion as Jehovah's Witness, baptism is a big deal. Is getting closer to God. And for me, I don't want to die before I get baptized. When I get baptized, I'm cleaning myself. I'm gonna be clean. I want to clean myself, you know. So I got a lot more work to do, but that's where I'm going. And I want to say rest in peace to Jeff. And I want to say I pray that God you know, let him rest in peace, or let him stay in heaven. You understand? So thank you. I want these guys to say. Can these guys say something, mommy?
Thank you for putting me on the spot like that. I didn't know Jeff very well. I'd met him a couple of times, and I thought it would be better today for people that were close to him to give their stories about him and pay their respects. But nevertheless, Jeff played a very prominent part in building this magnificent movement. He was a very powerful, eloquent man who should be respected, and we stand here in his honor. We stand here to remember, help build each other, to help empower one another, to help improve humanity. Jeff was a prominent part of that, so we stand here to honor him. I love you, everyone here. We all have love in our hearts for our freedom, for our brothers and sisters across the world. We stand in power. Rest in peace, Jeff. I love you all. We stand here to honor Jeff Wyatt, R.I.P.
Thank you very much, Remix and Nacho. And I'd like to personally thank Nacho and Kelly, and also Piers and Heiko, because they have all provided variously the sound system, the mics, and we had Piers bought a backup just in case something went wrong. Heiko very kindly bought the steps, and Nacho very patiently showed me how to use a mic, and I was quite amused that I struggled even with the concept of the off and on buttons. So thank you very much for that. I'd now like to ask Wilsey to come and say a few words. As you will all know, he's always on the other side of the fence, but today he's going to be in a different position, so I'm going to ask him to say a few words.
Yes, it is a bit weird being on this side with all of these cameras usually when all of these cameras are pointing at me, you know, it's all the police coming in with the punches and whatnot. I just wanted to speak because I've known Jeff for about 5 years now, I think it is. And I've known him since, you know, I see Eleanor there, we've got Michelle, we've got Richard, we've got Marco, right? We've got a whole bunch of people who've been out here campaigning for our freedom for years. And he was out there outside Parliament, you know, and he was coming down from Milton Keynes, and he was fighting for our freedom, and he's been in it for a long while. He was fighting with For Britain, he was fighting outside the carriage gate, and one of the reasons he did this is because he understood his history, and that's one of the things that he really cared about, one of the things he really talked about, and one of the things that he talked with me about. It was the fact that we had, and each of us, every single one of us, is born with rights. These are our rights. They're our natural rights. They're inherent. They come from nature. They don't come from government. They're not given, and they can't be taken away. And right now, we have a government that's trying to erase, just like in 1984, just like in Animal Farm. You start with all of the rules on the barnyard wall, and eventually they are erased. We must make sure that our history isn't erased. We must make sure that our rights are not forgotten and they are passed on to the next generations. So one of the important things that I need to say is get your children out of the state schools now! Do not give up the next generation of this country, and it only takes one generation for liberty to die. Do not give up the next generation of this country to people who believe that might makes right. Do not give up the next generation to people who believe that boys can become girls and girls can become boys, and who can't even tell you what a woman is. Don't give up the next generation to people who literally teach, and I've heard this from someone who's worked as a teacher, who think that King Lear is about toxic masculinity. This is what they're teaching in the schools. that government is good to obey, not to think, not to react, not to question. It's battery farming, and it's going on right now as we speak. And we can't let it continue. So please, remember you have rights. Tell everyone you know that they have rights, and pass that memory on, because that's what Jeff wanted to pass on to all of us. He wanted to pass on to all of us that we, our families, our ancestors have been here long before this government, and they'll be here long after with the rights that we shed our blood for.
Thank you very much, Wolsey, for these stirring words. Wolsey mentioning gender identity reminds me that perhaps when I introduced myself earlier as Kerry McCallum, I should have given you my pronouns. Well, my pronouns are get and fucked. I'm just going to ask Mick from Official Voice to say a few words. He, like me, doesn't do public speaking. Jeff and I went on, I think, most of the Official Voice rallies, but also the midweek protests, where there was a sort of die-hard group of us, about 150, 200. And let's just say that some of these protests were very interesting, and I've still got the bruises, literally still got the bruises from some of these protests. Jeff and I were very much, let's just say, we were the older, well, let's be frank, we were the oldest. We looked like Granny and Grandpa on these midweek things, but I'd like to think that we held our own. We held our own. As I said, we had the bruises. I've actually still got 6 outstanding complaints which have gone to appeal about the protest, the Official Voice protest that we went on. We went to the MHRA building, and that was quite interesting. And then we went on to protest outside the child vaccination unit, which was at the Science Museum. And that was referred to earlier by somebody else, and the behaviour of the police that day was absolutely shocking. I was attacked on 3 separate occasions, and it was an absolute disgrace. But anyway, I'm just going to ask Mick if he's right behind me, if he'd like to speak.
Thank you. I'm not very good at this. The reason I'm standing is because someone just come up to me and said, we used to have a few words. And I said, well, and I said, well, Jeff had a lot of respect for Official Voice. As soon as they said that, that just, just filled me with pride, because if that man had respect for Official Voice, then we've done something right. Yeah. Because I had the utmost respect for him, and to hear that being said, that's just put me right up there, to have that from a man like that. Like I said, we did our things. We did the meet we things. We had our hairy moments. I normally sort of went off and I went inside the buildings, but every time I was inside one of these buildings, I looked out the window and Jeff was standing there at the front, and it was like, no matter what, no matter where, he was always there. I went to things outside Parliament, there might only be 100 people, Jeff was there. I marched down Oxford Street with 1 million people, Jeff was there. And like I say, I stood inside an ITM building, looked out the window, and Jeff was there. It didn't matter where I turned, Jeff was there. So, yeah, so like I say, to hear that he thought something of us, of our group, then it's just an honour and a pleasure to be here for him. And thank you for just letting me say that. That's all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mick. I've just been asked by somebody who calls, who says modern day jester, a term I'm not familiar with, so if you'd like to come forward.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Modern Day Jester here. I hope you're all well. This is beautiful to see, you know, one another congregating, and a lot of pain and destruction has caused so much division, as we all know, and it's coming to a time where I believe we all need to unite more than ever now with one another. We've tried our best to save so many souls, including our own families, and unfortunately a lot of these people, they just don't want to listen, and the more time we try and fight against it, the more and more that we feel detracted away from the truth, which is being connected to the source, and the source is Yahuwah. It's in our DNA. 10545 is the DNA code structure. God's name is I am, and living through his image in Christ, which is love, light and energy, is key to everything. We have so many beautiful buildings up and down the country, and they're called churches, all right, and a lot of them are always abandoned. There's no one in them, all right, but when you go in there, isn't it such a beautiful sense of just an amazement? You know, they're actually incredible, but so much things can happen in these places of worship, and worship is giving back out to our Creator, all right. It's giving so much gratitude for what we have been given. We have been given life, ladies and gentlemen. We are still here. We're still here. We're here for the fight, and we're going to fight the good fight of the faith. It's just that simple, all right? I'm going to do my best to help vanquish this evil out of existence forever. You can damn straight about that, all right? And I love you all. Thank you so much for doing whatever you can to help spread the truth. But now it's about trying to be organized. True unity, all right, comes with ditching the ego, ditching the pride, all right? Come and congregate in the houses of worship, okay? Ditch the formalities of one vicar just speaking the pages from the Bible. Imagine these buildings being filled with so many beautiful people interacting, inspiring, expressing, dancing, singing, educating one another on all sorts of things that makes us beautiful and formidable and connect more than ever. And that comes with nature, that comes with being connected to Yahuwah. Yahuwah. Anyways, I love you, God. I love you, Christ. I love you, nature. I love humanity. I love my family. And I love myself. Grace be with you. Peace. And God bless.
And we love Jeff.
I love Jeff.
Thank you. I'd just like to introduce Liz Phillips. Liz has known Jeff for a long time, much longer than me, and was with Jeff in his Brexit days and before that in his political life. But never mind, I'll pass the mic to Liz and let her explain.
Hello everybody, fantastic to be here. I'm here with three hats on. I've got a very big head, so I've got three hats on. UKIP, Hearts of Oak and myself, and for all of UKIP and for the fight that Jeff and I had within the movement, for all the UKIPers here today, we know what it was all about. Jeff and I have known each other for a long time, and under the good old gypsy saying, we know each other warts and all, so we know exactly where each other came from. Earlier this year we lost a great sportsman in Australia called Shane Warne. Now Jeff, to me, was our Shane Warne, and through the auspices, if you like, of social media, people down under knew about Jeff as well. And on our own channel, we had a Jeff Wyatt complete line for him, and I interviewed him many times. So he was known down under. And the analogy between Jeff, Shane Warne and cricket is that Jeff always played with a very straight bat. You knew exactly where you came from, and thank God. He spoke to people, he didn't speak at them, he spoke to them, and he spoke in words of one syllable, so that everybody understood exactly where he came from. I can't say enough that how we'll all miss him. I've known him so many years, and on the very big march when you were in London, you all came up the embankment, and along the embankment I skipped out, being a bit older than some of you. I'd nipped up onto the bridge by Charing Cross, and I looked at the sea of faces all coming towards me, and right in the middle of it was one of Jeff's placards, and underneath it, looking up at me, smiling and waving, was Jeff Wyatt. What a man. And how we're going to go on without him, the only thing I can say is I don't do religion, but I do faith, and I've got an awful lot of faith, and the only way I can sort of get to grips with the fact that Jeff's gone is the fact that he's gone on ahead. Now, if he's sat with God now, he knows, God will know, and Jeff knows we need help down here. So, Jeff, it's up to you to make sure you don't take no for an answer and we get more help than we can possibly imagine. So, good luck to everybody. God bless everybody. Well done.
Thank you very much, Liz. I just wonder, is there anybody else that would like to say a few words?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks everyone for coming. Seeing some old faces here, old, new, borrowed and blue. But tribute to my friend Jeff. Profoundly missed, like everyone. I was shocked when I heard what happened. I couldn't believe it. He looked in the picture of health. But I last saw Jeff earlier this year in Southall, a meeting in Southall with some Skirchan and some of the other Sikh guys that are normally with us. Can't see him today. And Jeff was a true warrior. He was just an all-round nice guy. It will be just sadly missed, you know. But you can take something positive from every experience, and despite the tyranny, the profound tyranny over the last 2.5, nearly 3 years now, we found our tribe and we know where we're heading. You know, as Piers was saying earlier on, we don't want divide and conquer. We don't. I mean, I can't personally think. I've never seen one Socialist Workers' Party banner here at all. I think the only Marxist group I've seen here are the Spartacus League, who say that they're against. They're rather unusual. And for me, one of the most profound ironies of this current situation over the last 2 years is that the left have gone along with Big Pharma. The left have gone along with mega capitalism. This is the most strange thing about. I've got friends in America, Democrats. They've gone along with everything they've said. So, but I think to say that this is a Marxist takeover is a total misnomer, because the idea of Marxism, and I call myself a socialist, a libertarian socialist, the idea of Marxism is basically freedom of speech, and basically from private ownership to public ownership, which means that you go into a hospital and no one asks you for a checkbook. You go into a socialist environment and you're treated. What we've got at the moment is a few nutters, a few psychopaths, a few tyrants with mega millions that want to control us at any cost, Some of the middle class that live out in the blue rinse areas of the UK that never thought this would happen, live in Norfolk and places like that, they've got a big shock coming to them, because they're the middle class, the ones that they which is the primary target of the Great Reset. And basically, these fifth columns, and by the fifth columns I refer to the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum and others, which have crept in, been brought in by animals like Boris Johnson without prior consent of the British people, brought in totally underhand without your consent. Many people, millions of British people have never heard of the Great Reset. They haven't got a clue of what it is, or where it's going, or what it's doing at the moment. And a word for the police, who have played a big part in the last 3 years. We've seen what they're like, and we will never forget the way they kept people kettled in for hours. And I'm talking about pregnant women kept in, made to piss their pants for hours on end, without any humility, without any decency. I served with some great men in the Falklands War, you know what, and they were brave men for all their faults. No soldier would ever do that. We must never forget the tyrants in the TSG and the type of people that join these organisations. They had predisposing personalities in the first place to want to join it, and we must never forget their brutality towards us. Never. But you know what, when I say we take something positive from every experience, basically we know what the police are capable of. We now know that, as George Orwell said, they will do whatever. And I'll say that again, the police will do whatever the state requires them. If they were told to bear arms, they would bear arms. That's the type of person that we've got joining the so-called police these days. People like Wayne Couzens, who now sits in a 9-foot by 12-foot cell in Belmarsh prison. He's appealing, can you believe that? It was the way he killed that poor girl. He arrested her under coronavirus legislation, which had never been brought in the first place. Sarah would have been alive today. He strangled her, but before he strangled her, he handcuffed her so she couldn't even fight back. What a craven coward of a man. That is the psychological profiling of the people you've got joining the police today. And when we talk about political policing, we must remember Rotherham and Telford and these other places would not have happened had the police not been politicised. Basically being told that fitting in a community cohesion statistic is paramount to yet getting young girls buggered, and I'm talking about underage girls and without the age of consent. That's the sort of person. Nothing will change until we get these tyrants out of the police force. It's outrageous what has happened. I realise I'm speaking to the converted, but nothing changes until that happens. But we must never ever forget, and when this tyranny comes back, when they bring in more legislation, and the Tory party now have got a litany of repressive bills going through Parliament. Each one that they make is a precursor for a worse one. It reads as a police state. George Orwell, that wonderful Englishman that wrote this book, not just as stories but as a warning of what can happen. We must never forget, the police aren't your friend, the state aren't your friend. Thank you, my friends. Every one of you is a brave hero, and I include people like Nat Letizia the other night, who's come out, who's given out a mega million paying job because his conscience got the better of him. Thank you, Matt, and thank brave warriors like Piers. Every conviction, every fine should be expunged. Everyone who's convicted, and the champions of the police were, this will give you an idea, they were going around hospitals arresting people just for showing that hospitals were empty. Those heroes in the police, those champions of justice. God help us. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you. It's getting cold, and I think perhaps we'll just have a couple more speakers, and then I'd like to invite Lucy, Jeff's daughter, to close today by saying a few words. So I'm just going to ask Chris, who got arrested a couple of weeks after Jeff, just to say a few words very briefly, and then I'm going to ask Sean, who's here on behalf of Unity News Network. And I forgot to mention that David Clues had hoped to be here today but couldn't, unfortunately, and sent his apologies. So I'll just ask Chris to speak very briefly.
Thank you. Yeah, I myself, I thought about going to the protest on the 16th of May. I didn't go in the end, but I was here 2 weeks later and I was arrested. And when I went to speak to somebody, I phoned up Jeff and I had a little chat with him. In the police station on the phone. I got to know Jeff a little bit through a WhatsApp group I was in with lots of other ex-UKIP Brexiteer people, and he was one of the few people in the group that was speaking out against the lockdown. And it was extraordinary to me how so many people who had fought for freedom against the European Union didn't see this tyranny coming. They believe in the current narrative, but he spoke out about it. And I had a few conversations on the phone with him because we were both looking for protests. And that's the thing I remember most about Jeff, is that he was there from day one. The spring of 2020 was an incredibly dark time in our history, and what made it particularly dark, we'd faced the biggest loss of freedoms, the biggest tyranny and government overreach we'd ever seen, and yet hardly anyone, except for a few of us, the masses were all in favour of it, which made it an incredibly dark time, an incredibly difficult time for those of us who knew what was going on. But it would have been an even darker time if it had not been for Jeff. And we've badly needed people like Jeff in our movement who've made their presence felt, who spoke in very clear, unmistakable ways. So I want to give a big thank you to Jeff. I've met him a few times subsequently, had a few conversations with him. He'd send me links on WhatsApp, which I didn't always get round to reply to. But thank you very much, Jeff, and we'll have to continue the fight.
Thank you very much, Chris, and you're absolutely right, the fight must go on. Bearing in mind it's cold and the weather has been kind to us, but it's now started to rain. I'm delighted to have both Lucy and Sasha here. Lucy is Jeff's daughter, his only child, and she would like to say a few words. Lucy.
I just wanted to thank everybody who was involved in organising today, because I realise it's a lot of time and effort, especially this lady here to the right in the beautiful red coat. There's a lot of time and effort that's been put into this, so Sasha and I are very grateful. I can feel Dad, I can feel him here. He's not gone to me. I can feel him in my heart. Obviously he's my dad, and I'm at a great loss, but I don't feel alone. I can feel the loss in all of you people as well. You are his family. He felt at home with you. That's why he spent a lot of time with you. You're like-minded people, and he was very proud of everything that you represented, and of course he was the unifying force that drove it forward. He has always been a very fearless person. For as long as I can remember, obviously he's been in my life all my life. He has never been afraid of saying what he thought, and he always fought for what he believed in. When I was young, I often remembered him falling out with a lot of people, and I remember being in the corner thinking, oh, what do I do? I guess I follow Daddy and walk out the room, because that's what you do. I was always Daddy's #1 fan, and I followed him through the many girlfriends that he had, and thankfully he eventually met Sasha, who is a wonderful lady and has been in our lives for 11 years. But I can't deny that the last couple of years has been plain sailing. Our relationship, even though we have always been very, very close, it has been very difficult. I would say probably 90% of people in my life don't see what's happening, and that was very difficult for me, because I've got my dad, who is obviously fighting the streets for what he feels is right and what you all know is right, and then I've got the rest of my family telling me that he's a nutter and he doesn't know what he's talking about. So there was a lady that actually said a few words earlier, who said that she saw Dad, and he said that he had probably the worst Christmas that he has ever had, and that was because we actually had an argument, and that was probably the only argument that we've ever had in our life, and that argument was because he put his beliefs before me, and I didn't understand why he did that. But what I didn't see was he was actually fighting for my future. So he was doing it for me. And I'm very sad that he's not here to see this, although he did come to support me at a lot of my various achievements and performances and other things that I've done in my life, but I think this is probably would have been the proudest moment if he was here today. But I know he's watching, and I can feel him here. So just as a close, really, please keep fighting for what you believe in and what you feel is right, and don't cease fight when things get tough. Dad was a lion, and he never ceased fight, no matter the challenges, and he will always be remembered as the man that never suffered fools gladly.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I think we all have to very much remember that no matter how devastated and sad and upset we are, it's but nothing to the sadness that Sasha and Lucy are experiencing. I'd like to end by thanking you all most sincerely for coming. There are a lot of people that have spent money that they perhaps didn't have and travelled a great distance to be here today. It's now wet and it's cold, and I wish you all a safe journey home. And I would just like to say thank you on behalf of Jeff, because I know that if Jeff could be here today, or if he is looking down on us, Lucy was right. He did see all of us as his extended family, and he would be so pleased and so touched that so many people have taken time out to come and to be here today. So thank you, not just on behalf of me, but thank you on behalf of Jeff. And I vow, and I'm sure every single other person here today vows, that not only will we not forget you, Jeff, but we will continue the fight, and we will do it in your honour. Thank you.
Fight on for Jeff. You got a mark for him? No. I know you want to charge for it. Resist.
Well, thank you all. Anyone who wants some leaflets, there are some leaflets here. You can think resist if I do not comply and pick up some leaflets. Jeff Wyatt, 21st century hero. There, it's over there.
I've seen many of
Thank you.
videos.
Oh,
Thank you.
Excellent.
James from Cambridge, two Cambridge stands.
Oh!
Also a Brexiteer.
Yeah, I just wasn't in it at the time. I was privately doing my own business where I was, alone, again.
Yeah. So like we found each other in the end.
Yeah, it's funny how it worked out, isn't it?
Weird. I think if that vote hadn't happened and if they hadn't done it, none of us would have met each other.
I think we would have met over this lockdown instead.
Probably, yes. Yeah, because that's...
I think we would have just met years later.
Yeah, just eventually it was kind of destined, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Destined.
It was destined to happen.
It's just
something to call us together. It's weird, isn't it?
I think this rejoin the EU protest sounds right for a counter protest.
Definitely. Oh, absolutely. Apparently,
let me know if you hear about it.
Michelle was saying there were a bunch of Remainers who were down. He came from that direction and he saw a bunch of Remainers.
Hey, Wilson, thanks for the name check.
Oh. Yeah.
Hello again.
Hello there. Hi.
Yeah, it's just that was. So there are. I don't know if they were going to storm us at some point. You know, the little.
What were the police?
No. You said you'd seen a bunch of Remainers.
Oh, they were right down the bottom at Hyde Park.
Were they there to do with this or?
No. They're doing their own mad megalomaniac thing, you know. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Perhaps they were outnumbered.
I'm going to mention my name.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't mention your name.
I got mentioned.
Publicising me.
Because they've called me someone you knew.
Yeah, it's a source, okay? Okay, a journalist never reveals its source.
Protecting the source.
You're a teacher as well. Yeah,
What's your say?
I can go to the Netherlands because they accepted they're allowing the young vaccinated, but I just think it's difficult trying to find them.
Where were you? Right, I shall.
Your mini speech was right on the money. You need to do more of them.
Oh, thank you very much. Right, I think, guys, do you want to say a couple of words?
Yeah. Good luck.
Do you want to say a few words?
Everything must go.
Okay. Right, are you coming on camera? Right.
Was that the right way?
We voted leave.
We did, we absolutely.
And we would like to stop sending all of our money and still, we're basically still in the EU.
Yeah, we are.
Yes. And Jeff called for us to get out, so bollocks to that, and bollocks to the lockdowns, and bollocks to anyone who tries to get rid of our Magna Carta.
Absolutely. We're born free, and I'm going to die free.
All the best, guys. Bye-bye.